Well, there's the decision from the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee to increase interest rates by 75 basis points, very much to the higher end of expectations. You saw the Reserve Bank Governor there. Our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, with us in studio. Xolani, good afternoon to you. 75 basis points. This is going to hurt. Could it be, still, despite the hurt, the right decision?
It is the right decision because we would rather hurt people now than wait until the November meeting closer to where people need to be free financially because of the holidays. So now we can expect that maybe in November, in that last meeting, because now we know what today has brought us 75 basis points. There's still 2 more meetings to go, and we can expect 50 basis points in those meetings or 25 basis points. Nothing like this. But it is a good decision in that front. And the fact that the Reserve Bank Governor has constantly said that we should expect these increases, although this 75 basis point hike was informed by what he already mentioned. You know, when it comes to the revision downwards of the global economic activity, and surprisingly the revision upwards of South Africa's economic activity at from 1.7% at the May meeting to now 2%. But he did straight say just before we went off there that financial and economic conditions are expected to remain tough and volatile for the foreseeable future. Many people are not going to like this because many people also believe that policy is made to protect the most vulnerable. The bank's role is to protect the value of our currency, and but what has happened, clearly, the inflation, high inflation that we've experienced, and we've heard core inflation being revised from 6.3% to 6.5% above the rate. All those things are not good, and they are actually pushing the Reserve Bank to this particular decision. And a lot of people are not going to like it because they believe policy should be made to actually protect the most vulnerable.
It's in the Constitution, isn't it? Protecting currency. I think it's actually right there. You need to change the Constitution. There's clearly a big worry about this phrase around de-anchoring inflation expectations. In other words, the Reserve Bank, to put it very sort of clearly or simplistically, the Reserve Bank is very worried that people are expecting higher inflation, that workers are going to demand higher than inflation increases to account for that. We've seen that many times. Look at what's happening at SARS at the moment, for example. They want 11%. The point is the bank is sending a signal, right? It's saying we will not allow it.
Yes, it's quite dangerous because we are having wage negotiations in the civil, in the public sector, including SARS, as you've mentioned. There are many other wage negotiations that are happening, and you run the risk of putting the finances of those organizations when unions, rightfully, when they are told by the MPC that inflation is still going to be a runaway for the next 6 months. They would rightfully go and want their pound of flesh. But as we've heard from the likes of BHP this week, one of the world's biggest miners, they are warning commodity miners that commodity prices are going to correct in the next couple of months, and the situation is not going to be the same. And they are also worried about unions around the world demanding more wages, because rightfully so, miners have enjoyed a lot of good income from the high commodity prices and also the good recovery that we've seen from COVID-19. So this is a warning that has been fired, but are unions going to listen? I don't think they will listen to the Reserve Bank Governor at all.
I'm sure. There's plenty of other things to it. I mean, it also is a reminder of how little of this is within our control. Fuel prices are not within our control. No one controls what's happening at Eskom, frankly, so energy as a whole is out of our control. Certainly that's the impression that we get. The point I'm trying to make here is that actually the only thing we can do to control inflation, and we know what inflation does, it leads literally to people not being able to buy food. The only way to control it is to do what the Reserve Bank is doing.
Yes, and there is something that we can do on our own individually in the households and to try and mitigate the high inflation. And this is a warning. Having spoken to a number of economists, they tell you that ahead of this meeting, they will tell you that, listen, you think things are bad right now. Just wait for a couple of months. Save money. Be active when you are dealing with your finances. And this is what this is calling us to do. 75 basis points is a lot of money. It can be thousands of rands depending on how much loans you have, how many properties you have, how many cars you have, and it's just going to eat into your pocket. But this is going to be much worse for the poorer households, and that's where the big worry is. Whether the 350 rand grants is enough, clearly it's not going to be enough. But, Stephen, we have been expecting this, and we should expect more of such pain in the next 2 meetings.
It's also, you either have a short, sharp recession now or a longer, deeper recession later.
When you use that word, I have tried to stay away from the word recession, because although the data that we're getting is showing us that exactly what we should expect in the coming months, because the U.S. Federal Reserve also showed with the 75 basis point increase that we are in a recessionary period already. Although we are waiting for a slew of data to still come in, the data that we have already should tell us that as an emerging economy, as the Reserve Bank governor said, there could be outflows of investments, and that is not good for us. There are tougher times ahead, and we need to, this is sobering, and we need to actively plan around our finances, and actually plan for at least another 50 basis point hike before the end of the year.
Okay, so a lot more to come. There'll be reaction to this as well, of course, but the Reserve Bank will also be looking at what's happening in other countries. Lebanon, Zimbabwe, where I don't think there are enough digits to describe what's happening to inflation there. The situation in Sri Lanka, and they'll be saying this is what makes us act.
Central banks in Africa this week are, if today and tomorrow, are actually going to be announcing their interest rates decisions, and they are not going to leave rates unchanged. We are expecting that there will be increases across the board, but this is presenting the high inflation environment. They are presenting a lot of pressure for African economies that are poor. For countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Kenya, Ghana, those countries have a lot of debt from Western lenders and China in particular, and we are looking at them. The latest Bloomberg Vulnerability Index puts even South Africa at risk of defaulting on their loans, and this is the risk that we are running, not only as South Africa but as a continent, and many countries on the continent are pushing for debt restructuring because the interest rate payments are just way too high for the lenders, and they want those debt to be restructured. Many of them are getting their debt restructured, but the risk now is you are risking your own local development to the whims of your lenders, who are going to tell you where and how to spend your money. So it's a really, really tough times for everybody, really.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this interest rate increase of 75 basis points could have been worse. There's a member of the Monetary Policy Committee, and I'm sure their name will come out in the minutes when they're released, who wanted 100 basis points.
And they were not wrong. They were not wrong. Take the pain right now. Many people will rather say, I take the pain right now than enjoy some of the money that I have and take the pain much later when I'm going to need money for travel and for the holidays. But it is something that, it shows you how serious inflationary pressures have put our finances at. 100 basis points, I would not have been surprised.
All right, Xolani Mbanjwa, thank you very much indeed, our political editor. I think on the side of the Hawks on this one. Well, then, just to recap, the Reserve Bank raising interest rates by 75 basis points, an indication of the inflationary times in which we live.